Here we go. All right. So it's not showing up on my phone. All right. So welcome. If anybody's here for the live, I am Jen of Jen Merritt Live Life Happy. And with me, I have Amanda, who is a friend of mine. We met during one of the courses that we took last year, actually. So it's been a year. And I thought it would be really fun just to have a conversation about mindset. And who knows, this could become like a series of things that I do, because I find it's actually quite fun to do. And so again, same as 2 weeks ago when Annika was on with me, we had a topic that we were discussing, but we didn't have, really anything in particular that we wanted to cover. We just wanted to keep it natural and have a conversation. So tonight I thought Amanda and I would share mindset and sort of maybe a little bit of our story, how we got from one mindset, which would be a fixed mindset, to now, which would be more of a growth mindset, and maybe the steps, and we'll just see where it takes us. So Amanda, do you want to say hi?
Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Muehlers, and I run a Facebook group called Dragonfly Lotus Healing. I have a business page as well, and dragonflylotushealing.com is my website. I do energy healing sessions right now, and I'm developing a course called Detox Your Life. Just kind of detox your body, mind, and soul. And yeah, so as far as mindset stuff, something that's coming up for me right now is for a long time, just to point something out really quickly, I had cancer. I always assume everybody knows that, but you probably don't. I had cancer, and my husband used to be the cook in the house, and after I got cancer, I decided to do a healthier diet, and so I started to do whole food, plant-based. And so I became the cook because he didn't want to do all those complicated recipes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the cook in the kitchen, and I was very controlling of the kitchen. I didn't want him to touch anything. I didn't want him to go into the fridge. I didn't want him to do the dishes. He did them wrong. I was making him wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized after doing this class with Jen that actually our teacher kind of like virtually slapped me in the face, and she's like, wake up, like stop, going after him, like just take a second and think. And eventually I realized that the only reason that I wanted to take control of everything in the kitchen, it wasn't because he was doing anything wrong. It wasn't because I was mad at him. It was because I felt like I had control in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other things in my life, like the cancer and other things that just weren't in my control. And so I wanted so badly to be in control of the kitchen. So I took control. And so finally I had to really let go. And, something that our teacher kind of told us was to just sort of like pick your battles, almost like figure out what things actually mean something to you, like that you need to compromise or work on. And think before you freak out, kind of thing. Like that was kind of something that really started to make me grow as a person, because I started to see that in other things, in other people, and other relationships. And so I started to not be like, I don't get angry as much anymore, because I'm starting to see that now. I'm starting to see that, like, okay, why am I really getting angry? Like, what's the real reason? And am I really angry at them, or is it something that had to do with me?
Right. Is it a trigger of some sort?
Yeah.
Like a mirror or something in yourself that it's bringing up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I've had the same thing. Well, we don't have a dishwasher at the moment, but when we did have a dishwasher, I used to do the same thing with my husband, that I would actually rearrange everything in the dishwasher so that it was done my way. And yeah, I know. And it's funny because when you think of it, it's like, is it actually, like what she was saying, is it worth getting mad over? Like, is it actually a personal value? or boundary that they're crossing, or is it just something that you're just kind of annoyed about, right?
Right.
Yeah, I know. And that's when I think that's important time to take that step back and be like, is this actually like a boundary that's being crossed? Or is it a trigger that's just kind of like setting me off?
Right.
Right.
In which case you have to dig in and figure out, why am I getting triggered?
Right.
And, do your own work, do your own
Right.
inner work before you, explode on that person.
And I think, and to me, I think all of this sort of like encompasses mindset, because without changing your mindset, you wouldn't even start thinking, you wouldn't even have that thought pattern.
Right.
Right. So a fixed mindset, I would feel like you're still, well, obviously you're still fixed, but you're still maybe fixated on like what's right and what's wrong, what's white and what's black, what's good and what's bad, or whatever. Right. Where a growth mindset is asking more questions, looking at the possibilities. Yeah, it's not just positive and negative in terms of mindset. I feel like it's a growth mindset is more about like exploring, in a sense.
Right. And seeing
More about
things
exploring within yourself, which is kind of interesting.
like negative experiences as possibilities, rather than like possibilities for growth, rather than a bad thing,
Yeah.
I just recently had a pretty rough experience with some roommates who are moving out on Saturday because we kicked them out. And it was very hard. I was struggling a lot with my health because they were smoking in the house, and they had lots of really strong scented products, which I'm very, very sensitive to. And so I was having allergic reactions constantly and coughing, and I was basically been sick for the last month. And so that was really, really tough. But I realized that there's a lesson in it. I learned something. I learned that I have to, I have to have stronger boundaries for myself. And I need to, really, honestly, I need to be less trusting. I'm a very, very trusting person. And so is my husband. And we both had to learn a hard lesson with this situation. But it is an opportunity for growth. Like, I know that. And I've learned a lesson, and it's a very important lesson for me to learn. So like, I'm just accepting that this is a lesson, and I will move forward from this and be okay.
Right. And not a failure.
Right.
Right. Because again, if you're looking at like a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, a fixed mindset would look at that and just think it's a failure.
Right.
Like either you failed, or you made just a really bad choice, or whatever. But a growth mindset would look at that as, like you said, there's opportunity there for growth. There's a lesson in there somewhere. And it just sort of brings to light something that you weren't even aware of. Like you weren't aware that you maybe needed stronger boundaries.
Right.
Yeah.
And
you know.
Exactly. And at first I went there to that failure mindset. I went to like, oh my gosh, I made a terrible decision. What is wrong with me? Like, why didn't I look into these people? But then I realized, like, this is just a lesson that I needed to learn, because I did kind of throw out to the universe, like, that if this was going to be a good thing, and maybe in a way it was, because I learned something really important.
Exactly. I think that sometimes, so I was just talking about that in my coaching thing the other night. My group was that you might get a yes for something, because we were talking about following our yeses, right? And I was saying, like, you could get a yes for something. Like, you could have got a yes, and you probably did get a yes to have these other people stay in your home, right? But it's not always the yes that you think it is. It was maybe the yes for the lesson, so that you'd finally understand this boundary.
Right.
It's funny how it works that way. It's actually quite crazy. So again, it's not a failure, because it brought you closer to an understanding.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that I did end up throwing out to the universe again and saying, like, can you help me? Like I said, I threw out a universal ask, and I was like, what would it take for them to find a place and find a place that's better for them.
Mhm.
You know, like now, and have have it be just an easy transition. And I kind of feel like that sort of happened. I mean, it was kind of awkward for a little while, but they're moving on Saturday, so
That's
hopefully it'll
good.
be good for everybody involved.
That's good.
Mhm.
Um, for me, I feel like my I was always kind of a positive person, like pretty much. Like there was definitely times that I wasn't for sure, but I feel like kind of like borderline on mostly positive, I'd say. And then going through different life circumstances and stressors, like a divorce, can can change that, right? Because it, especially with the length of time. So when you want something to kind of happen quickly and it's not happening quickly, and it's, again, it kind of goes back to this control thing. It was completely out of my control. I had no control on the timeline whatsoever, and it was just so frustrating. And um so that was a difficult time. It was very difficult to stay positive then. And then I sort of went through, because of that, went through like a period of like some depression and some way heightened anxiety. Like I've had anxiety from for as long as I can remember, but this was just way more heightened. And that was a pivotal moment for me that I realized I need to do something about this. So
Mhm.
at the time, I did go on medication because I really did want something that was like a quick fix for me. I'd never tried medication before in that sense, but um, I really felt like I needed something like a quick fix so that I could still show up and be me, especially, for my daughter and everybody else. So, but then from there, it wasn't something that I wanted to stay, that I knew was going to be permanent. I knew that I was still going to have to find something to make me feel better and help me manage my emotions. And and yeah, so it's funny how I had sort of the catalyst for it was I had gone to like an essential oils class, and it was with doTERRA, and I had just joined, and I didn't purchase any oils or anything, but I thought they were really cool. And I've always sort of had a thing for essential oils, like been curious about them. So I don't know how it happened, but I started to get curious about them again. And at the time, at the place that I was working, in walks this woman she's a rep for, it was with doTERRA at the time. And she walked in with some samples. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. I was thinking about essential oils and wondering if they would be able to help me. And so that was sort of the beginning of changing. So I'm not with doTERRA anymore, but it was through doTERRA I became what they would call like a wellness advocate. And they have conferences and education things. And one of their conferences that I attended, it's funny how it's wasn't even about the product. It was about inspiring other people and personal development. And it was the first time that I can remember I'd ever attended something that really felt moving and really positive and inspiring. And um, it sort of set me on this track of exploring more. So, like exploring into podcasts, um, getting deeper with Reiki. I can't remember if I had already taken, I might have already taken my level 1, but it sort of um, made me pursue taking like the rest of my levels. and then the course that we took together, and then the holistic wellness course, and like it just sort of was like not in a bad way, I guess, but kind of like an addiction of sorts, of like, of staying on this personal development train.
Mhm.
And I think that's sort of the change too, is when you get into more of a growth mindset, you're working on your personal growth and your personal development. And then you just continue on that track, because
Do you think that,
you wouldn't go backwards,
right? Do you think that there's any element of like learning to oh my gosh, I'm blanking. So you're talking, tell me what was the last thing you said?
Like towards personal development, and like I said, I podcasts and courses, like going towards working on myself, almost you could almost call like an addiction in a way, because but it's not. It's just that I'm so I just feel so strongly on these positive things that I want to create more positive.
Right.
Right.
So do you think that there's any element of like realizing that you can't control other people, so you have to grow yourself, like you have to grow
100%.
yeah.
Right. And I think that comes full circle to exactly what you said, is when you start working on yourself, you realize that you can only control yourself and your thoughts. You can't change other people's.
Yes.
So,
and I think that's the hardest thing for people to realize, because a lot of my clients, they come to me and they want to complain about what other people are doing, and I always have to remind them, I'm like, it doesn't matter what they're doing. It matters how you perceive it. It matters how it's bothering you. It matters like what boundaries you need to set to make yourself feel safe and better about it. Like you can't change what they're doing. Like,
right.
It's not your job. And I think that that's the hardest thing for people to realize, is that they really have to focus on themselves and what they're seeing, what they're perceiving, and all of that.
And start asking yourself those questions, not asking them like, why are you doing that? Asking yourself, why does that bother me?
Right.
Right. So again, it's when you start focusing on yourself, it's you just can't stop, because everything really does start to change. I remember I heard this saying a long time ago, and even then, before this whole sort of journey began, it still struck me. And it was like, I'll probably don't know exactly the words, but it's like the difference between an adventure and an ordeal is your perception.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I was like, wow. So, because I remember shortly after that, I don't know what vehicle I was in, but I remember my car ran out of gas, and I wasn't that far like from my house, and my daughter was only like 3. So it was like, okay, well, we're going on an adventure, right? And again, luckily we weren't that far from the house, and it wasn't dark out or anything like that. But still, it was like, it was. I had read that quote somewhere, and then this happened. And if I hadn't have just read that quote, it was like I could have been like, oh, the car, and then, but for my daughter, it was like, yeah, it's an adventure, right? We're going to walk, and then we're going to call and see if someone can help us. And it's just, it is what it is. So it helps you get through those like difficult or annoying or ordeals, right?
Yeah.
By having a different perspective.
Totally. We when I was in Hawaii with my friends and my husband, we went on a helicopter ride, and I was so excited about it. Before we left, I was like, we're gonna go to helicopter. This is the coolest thing ever. Well, everybody else thought it was an amazing, great adventure, and it was pretty cool. But I was terrified the whole time because it was very windy. And I don't know if you've ever been a helicopter, but it drops a lot and does a lot. It has like major kind of the turbulence you feel in the plane, but
Yeah.
worse. And it was very scary because we're in this small little thing and it's doing all this crazy wiggling. Anyways, I was terrified. And so we both had a very different perception of what that was. Like I kind of thought of it as more of like an ordeal, like you were saying. She probably thought of it more of as a great adventure.
Yeah.
So it definitely does. It definitely can take perception to kind of switch things around. I mean, I've also been in like interesting situations where we got really lost and we're just like, well, we're lost, we're just on an adventure, and then it kind of takes the stress out of it because you're just like, well, we have
Yeah.
time, we're just going on an adventure, it's fine.
Right. And I think that's a big part of it, because when you start looking at it as an ordeal, you're right, it becomes stressful.
Mhm.
Then you're adding that stress to your body and your mind, and of course the emotion of it, right? So that's, I have a little fly. But that's part of the ordeal, is all of that emotion and everything that goes along with it, right?
Right.
Yeah. The one thing that came to mind, another story that came to mind, was a few summers ago, my husband and I were out like on his little like motorboat thing, and we had shut it down and sat for a bit. And then when he went to start it again, it wouldn't start. So again, I don't know why these are two like sort of vehicle sort of stories, but when, so then we had to paddle, and
Oh,
it takes a while. Like it doesn't, you're not going very fast, right? When you're paddling. And it actually was a good experience. Like we still laughed and we still chatted, and it was like, it's a memory versus, you know,
a trauma.
a trauma. Exactly. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a memory versus a trauma.
Yeah.
So that's another way to look at it again as well, is like um an adventure or a memory, or an ordeal and a trauma.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, so I do believe that a lot of times we do have the choice. Sometimes I wonder if there are times that we don't really have a choice. Like I'm wondering, the one thing that comes to mind is like for kids, like kids that have, say, two different perceptions of their home growing up,
Mhm.
right? Like one child could be like, it was always bad or negative and it was very traumatic. And then the other one could be like, you know, that didn't fizz me one bit. You know what I mean? Like it didn't affect me at all. And so I'm curious, I don't know, these weird curiosities of like just how our brain works and how people work in general. It's like how
Well,
does
one
one
thing
experience become different for two different people, right?
Right. One thing that's coming to mind right now for some reason is like, that extremely, like, let's just think of like an extremely stressful situation that would be pretty much stressful for pretty much everybody, would be like, let's just say that you're being held at gunpoint. Like,
Mm,
that's pretty darn scary. And there's not a lot of people that can just stand there and be okay with that. I feel like the only way that that could be like okay is if the person was completely just not afraid of death at all. You know
mm.
what I mean? Because then they could just be like, okay, well, this might be the way I'm gonna die, and they can just stay calm in the situation, which may even stop them from getting killed. I don't know, but
It's an interesting point though, because again,
yeah,
I feel like it is your perspective on it.
right, right. And so if you like, maybe you have past trauma or even past life trauma having to do with guns, and so you might have a really hard time staying calm in that situation. You're like probably more likely to panic. And then there might be other people who just aren't phased by it. It's definitely possible.
Mm. And then the next thing that sort of comes to mind too is when someone could be triggered by the other person having more of a positive outlook on it. Like something terrible, something say very dramatic could happen. And the person that's just like, well, we learned from it, that could also be triggering to some people, right? Like, what do you
Right.
mean? Like that was terrible. How could you just be like,
Yeah, how can you just be over it?
right? But I
Yeah.
think there's still some, what's the word I'm looking for? I still would choose that over snowballing deeper and deeper and deeper into the trauma. Do you
Right.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
as difficult as it is, even if somebody is, because it's more of that detachment sometimes too. Like when
Yeah.
you're able to stay detached from the situation, you're not getting emotionally involved, you're not going to be as triggered, you know? And
Hmm.
then you can kind of be like, okay, that happened. And a growth mindset looks at, so how do we fix it? How do we move forward?
Right.
Versus like um repeatedly, you know, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened,
Right.
right? And
Right.
looking at it more as like, okay, it happened, so what do we do next?
Right. How do I get out of this?
Yeah.
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 Um, I had some family members during COVID that and friends that kind of went into what I want to call a depression hole, and they didn't come out of it for a really long time. And I feel like there were, there was a mix of people during that time, like the people or like everybody that got locked down or whatever. Like there was some people that were just like, well, it is what it is, but I'm just gonna do whatever I want anyways, or whatever. Like there were some of those people that just didn't really care and just were gonna listen and
Hmm.
or follow the rules. And then there were other people that just like fell into this deep depression and they couldn't find their way out. And I just feel like, that's kind of the two opposite sides of it. But if people could get to a point where they're like, yes, we're kind of stuck inside, yes, we're dealing with this pandemic, when will it end, that kind of thing. Like what can you do in that situation, do you think, to help yourself move forward, get to the next step?
Well, and that's kind of a hard one to answer, because when you are in sort of the depths of depression, and I feel like there are different layers. Like
Mhm.
I don't feel like I was very deep into depression, but because I still had the awareness that I was. But
Mhm.
I feel like there could be deeper layers that you don't even realize that that's where you are. And
Right.
that I think is the hardest to pull yourself out of
Yeah.
when you're not even aware of it. So it's kind of a hard one to answer. Because I also felt I had this, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I felt like when I was in my depression, what I had realized about myself, not saying that everybody is like this, but what I realized about myself was that I was really only thinking of myself. Like I was so focused on how shitty I felt and how I felt and how shitty I felt everything was going on around me, that that's all that I was focused on.
Yeah.
And I had this book at home, and it talked about like selfless service, and how when you take the focus off of yourself and onto other people, even if you're just volunteering or something, like whatever it is, or just hanging out with a friend can help take the focus off yourself, or going to work, or taking your dog for a walk, or whatever it is. And I find that that is so maybe this is the answer is taking the focus off of yourself and onto other people and helping other people. Like that's
Yeah.
in any way that you can. Like it doesn't have to be monetary, it could just be spending time with somebody
Just
that's
reaching
maybe
out.
also going through a hard time, right? Like,
Yeah. Reaching out, a phone call, an email, anything,
yeah,
message, text message.
absolutely. Like it doesn't take a whole lot,
Mhm.
really. um
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to look at it.
and
I
I
mean,
always
I'm hopeful that we never have anything like that happen again, but
me too. Me
but
too.
everybody finds times where they fall into, some depression and they need a way out. So this is a
Yeah.
good little tip if
Yeah.
anybody finds themselves in that state.
The other thing too, and I don't know like how many people talk about it or look at it the same way that I do, but the the five languages of love, I think, are also like really important too, because knowing, because it doesn't have to be with just your partner, it could be with your friends or your coworkers or your children or whatever it is, your parents, and knowing what their language of love is and getting excited to express it for them, like say if somebody's language of love was gifts, and they're going through a hard time and you go to their house with a cup of coffee,
Mhm.
then that can go a long way.
Yeah, it's definitely good to know. Sometimes it's just funny though, because sometimes it's really easy to tell what their language is, and other
Mhm.
times it's a lot harder. Like it's almost hidden.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you can figure that out, that definitely helps a lot.
Yeah.
I have I have some family that are definitely gift givers and gift receivers, and I have my husband. He likes he told me this once, so I don't know if this is 100% true, but he told me that he likes acts of service.
Hmm.
So like, you know, I clean the house a lot. That's just kind of my job. But I also I'll do the dishes, or I'll do things for him, and like he really appreciates all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And those things mean a lot. Like if that's his love language, then those things mean so much more than say you buying him, an expensive gift or something, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I would say for myself, mine my top two would be service and then words of affirmation.
Okay.
So, and I say words of affirmation because the opposite can be true, that my feelings could get hurt by words, right? So words mean a lot to me, right? So I feel like words of affirmation is not the in and that's the thing, is like it doesn't have to be like I love yous, I love yous, I love yous, but it's kind of like it's the tone that people use, or like it's those sorts of things all encompass the words of affirmation.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um felt like there was something else I was going to touch on. We sort of went off on a little tangent. Oh, I know what it was. On the love language. I know what it was though, because you had mentioned about like opposing views. And we had
Yeah.
that conversation the other day about what's the word I'm looking
Polarity.
for?
Polarity.
Polarities, exactly. Yes. And what's the circle?
I don't know. I don't know. You're
Oh,
making a circle. I'm like, what are you doing?
I know. Oh my gosh, I can't even think of it. Anyways, it'll come to me. But
Okay.
yes, the polarities being on like either end of the spectrum, like this is right, this is wrong, right?
Right.
And but finding somewhere in the middle,
Right.
because this is where you get heated up on these two ends of the spectrum.
Right. And I think the most important thing there is to have like you probably are on one side. That's probably why you're even having a polarity at all, is because you are on one side. You have to figure out how you can understand and empathize with the other side in order to like find yourself a way to look above it all. Because
Right.
until you do that, you're just fighting. It's just a fighting energy. You might necessarily not be literally fighting with people about it, but it's happening energetically whether you're doing it or not, right?
That's right. And it's
So
happening to your body and to your system and to your emotions and to everything. Like it's festering inside of you because you're still allowing it to, really.
yeah.
Yeah. There's still a word I'm looking for. Oh, what was it?
so
Anyways,
some of
that's
the
okay.
some of the crazy topics we talked about when we were looking at this, and another word that they use is resonance fields.
That's it. Resonance field. Thank
Maybe
you.
that's the one you're looking for. Is some of the crazy topics we looked at were like abortion and murder and crazy things like that. But it's like you literally have to find like your whatever, whatever like feelings that person might be feeling like on the other side. Like try to look at it from their point of view, or put yourself in their shoes and see what what kinds of things are they coming up with, what are they feeling. And you just have to kind of try to find a way to empathize with them, because then you can kind of stand above it and you're no longer stuck in that energetic fight.
And then you can even take that down. I mean, those were like huge topics, but you can take that down to even like the simple things like having control in the kitchen.
Right.
Right. And how like your husband would say, do things differently than you would. Right. Yeah. So you want, say, the dishes done that way and he does them this way. But it's, again, trying to see it from his perspective. And is it really wrong? Right. Because it's on the opposite side of you, or right. Your perception of it being on the opposite side of you.
Right.
Because in his mind, he doesn't feel like he's doing anything wrong.
Right. And he really isn't.
No.
I just I was making it wrong.
Right. Exactly. So then you end up being the one that suffers. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, not you, I just mean like in general, right?
Well, no,
like,
right.
You end up being the one that suffers because you are the one that's still holding on to like your ways right and his ways wrong. And
right. And I'm getting all angry and tense about it all the time. And he doesn't even know it because I'm not saying anything.
Exactly.
So I'm just making myself sick because I'm like all stressed out about it. And the crazy thing is once I realized the whole reason I was doing that, like I felt so much better, and I literally stopped getting mad at him. Like it happened in a day, literally. Once I realized it, I was like, oh,
right.
Okay. I see what's happening now.
It's like you just drop the baggage.
Yeah. Just dropped it, like with snap of my fingers. It's gone. As soon as Caitlin slapped me in the face.
Yeah.
Energetically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So the only other thing I was going to share, see if this will work. I've never done a screen share on live. So just give me 1 second. Screen. Oh, share. So I wanted to share these guys here because this I thought was a really great example. Oh, there we go. Okay. This was a really great example, I thought, of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So again, going back to that word failure, a growth mindset is looking at it as failure as an opportunity to grow. And I'd almost even push that a little bit further in, is it even failure? Right? Like, I don't even know if I'd even use that word. And then a fixed mindset is failure is a limit of my abilities. So that's like what you were saying. It's like, what did I do wrong? What is wrong with me? Like, why would I make this decision?
Yeah, I like the term, I'm either good at it or I'm not, because I feel like that a lot. I really feel that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if I'm not good at it, then why am I even trying?
Yeah. And I guess I can relate to when I'm frustrated, I give up. 100% have done that. And it is something that I'm still working on. I definitely feel like I'm better, but 2 or 3 years ago, as soon as I got frustrated, I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. Don't even ask me. Don't talk to me about it. I'm done. But yeah.
There's this song I listened to like a million times it's from Encanto. I think it's called What Else Can I Do? But that might be the wrong name. But every time I listen to it, she says, what else can I do, several times. It's really about that whole idea of like, you get to that point of frustration, or you're stuck or whatever, and you have to start asking yourself, like, what else can I do? What else can I do to get past this? What's the next step? You
Yeah.
know, instead of getting stuck and stopping, like, what else can I do?
Right.
You know?
And what else is possible?
Yeah, what else is possible?
Because sometimes you're looking again just at one thing. You're looking at like one side of the story versus the entirety of, you know, there could be other possibilities.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then that goes here, like with the growth mindset, I like to try new things. And a fixed is I stick to what I know.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So like it's almost like you're staying in the safe arena, and also your body and your mind like automatically kind of wants to put you in that safe area. So like that's why you get stressed and frustrated and worried and concerned, and you want to quit because your brain is telling you, if you do this, you might get in trouble. If you do this, something bad might happen. If you do this, you might get stressed or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a protective mechanism for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's that aspect of like, there's lots of people that want to change. Right. But if they stick to what they know, that change isn't going to happen.
Right.
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 So
and that's
trying new
like,
things can definitely, you know, induce some change, create some change.
Mm-hmm.
But change can be scary for a lot of people. So it's not taken lightly.
Well, one thing I just want to say before we go on this next thing is like sometimes it just takes taking baby steps, you know?
Yeah.
Like do something really small that's new. Maybe you know, watch a YouTube video to learn a new skill. That's not like a, you know, something crazy, but just take a look at a YouTube video and
I haven't listened to it in a while, but I was listening to a podcast called The Mindset Mentor, and Rob Dial is the host of that podcast. And I remember in one of his, I mean, he's got like, I'm sure like over 1,000 episodes now. And I think I made it to like 100. Like there's just so many and there's so much information. And, but I remember one thing that he said is just, again, taking those baby steps and, you know, being 1% better tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it is unrealistic to think you're going to be 100% better tomorrow. Right. But being okay with that 1%, because then the following day you're going to be another 1%.
Right.
You know, and you just keep working at it every single day. And then certain things, you know, if you are trying new things, certain things become easier.
Yeah.
And then it's not really an effort to get that 1% anymore.
Right.
And you can start adding on some more.
Right. And I'm all about celebrating the small things. I have a planner. I write things in it every day that I'm going to do. And if I don't get to all of them, I just celebrate every single thing I did get done. You know, I don't beat myself up for not getting it all done.
Right. Yep. This one I thought was interesting too. The importance of mindset, like why having a growth mindset is important. So this I thought was neat because influencing your habits, because you'd make better choices, create new, healthier habits, which impacts your results. So that's, you know, actually getting change. Improved happiness and fulfillment with your life with a growth mindset, because you're not tied up in all that stress. How you view the world. So again, viewing your surroundings as like something negative or a failure versus, again, looking at it as an opportunity, because there always is opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. How we perceive others. That was that conversation about, like, for me, the dishwasher, but not doing it correctly. How you see yourself in the world. And that goes back to what you had said. What was the one that we read? Oh, if I can't do it right, then why bother?
Right.
Right. So if you see yourself as someone that is, say, a failure, that definitely would be a fixed mindset versus a growth.
Oh, this is a good time to bring up that yet thing. So anytime that
Oh, yes. Yeah.
anytime you're going to tell yourself that you can't do something, like I'm not good at that. Well, say I'm not good at that yet. Or you could
Yes.
say, you know, like I can't run right now. Well, I can't run yet, you know?
That's right.
Like if you add yet to it, you're making it a positive thing. It's something that you will eventually be able to do if you want
Yep.
to.
And I really believe on, you know, your words having power, and what you're putting out into the universe makes the difference. So if you have that fixed mindset and you're constantly putting out, like, you know, failure means that I suck, and why bother trying because I'm not good at it, or, you know, blah, 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 right? That's what you're constantly putting out to the universe. But when you start changing that and you start using words like yet, right? Like I can't run a marathon yet, or I'll say, if rather than saying something like I can't afford something, instead I'll say I am choosing to spend my money somewhere else. Because then again, it's like, I can't afford it if I really wanted to. Like you can always find ways, right? Like there's tons of different ways, but it's like, but I'm just choosing to spend it elsewhere
Mhm.
at the moment.
I like that.
Or you could use the word yet and say like, I want that, but I'm not buying it yet.
Yeah. That's
Right?
the way to do it too. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I feel like it's just your perspective.
Absolutely.
Super, super, super important. So yeah, I think I had one other. Let me just take a peek at what it was.
I've been
Oh, it's
yawning a lot on this call.
again.
I just want to say that's because I'm moving energy. It's not because I'm tired.
That's okay. I know sometimes doing a lot of talking, and especially where we're like we didn't have like a solid plan. We're just sort of like going with it organically. Our wheels are kind of turning more probably, and making our mind tired. But yeah, I think those are all really interesting things. Maybe what I'll do now to finish us off is I'll pull a card.
Okay.
I love pulling cards. They're my new favorite thing. I've always liked doing it, but lately it's.
You mind if I pull one too?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling from the Starseed Oracle.
Ooh, I almost grabbed that one. That's funny.
That's the one I chose.
It just Sacred Traveler.
Ooh, nice. This one is one of my favorites, and my other one is the Light Seers. I'm obsessed with that one.
Ooh, oh my gosh, this is so perfect with what we're talking about right now.
Okay. Whoop. All right, this one flipped over.
Yeah, mine.
I like pulling the ones that flip. So this again, same thing. It's perfect for what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So this one here is called, I've never pulled this card either yet. It's called Perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
Underneath it says, none of this matters. Zoom out, common ground. Seriously?
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been talking about.
Exactly what we were talking about. So again, I mean, there's so many different ways that you could look at this when we're looking at like perspective. It's like, I don't know, the first thing that comes to mind is like, man, like that's so small, or it's so far away, or, you know, it's going to take so long to get there, or versus it's like, oh, like, look at all the beautiful stars around it. I know it's probably hard to tell on the camera, but like, isn't that going to be fun to travel through all the stars to get there?
Yeah.
Right? Like those are two different ways of looking at it and perspective.
What the card that I got is called Begin Now.
Oh.
And it says, take your first step. So it's very fitting with what we were talking about earlier about just taking those baby steps and
Yeah,
just start what you're gonna do and
yeah.
just do it, and then keep taking steps towards it, even if you kind of feel like you're stuck. I'm in that exact spot right now. I need to like just go and just do it, just start.
I know. I think that's one thing. So a friend of mine wrote a book, and I read her book, and there's a part in it about excuses and the excuses that we make for things. Like, I don't know, I can't start a workout because whatever, or I can't start eating healthy today because of whatever, right? And so it was like this opportunity to look at what are the excuses that we're making and why,
Yeah.
right? Like, why? So say if you're, I mean, I've done it myself, but like you're need to make a big decision on something, and it's like, but so why are you holding back from it? Like, what's your excuse? Right? Sometimes you think it's a reason, but other times it could just be an excuse for
A
not
lot of the
wanting.
times it's an excuse. I find
Yeah,
myself, I have so many excuses.
I know. So that's another way of looking at it too, in shifting your perspective.
Mhm. Look and see which of your like reasons are actually excuses and what you can
Mhm.
do to still push forward, because they're obvious. Like for me, maybe it could be like a time thing. So I just started a job. Like, so where do I find that time
Mhm.
to work on my stuff, you know?
Mhm. Exactly. And, like your card, like taking that first step, it's like that's all that you need to do is just take that first step.
Right.
And then in my coaching group, that's what we talked about too, is like giving yourself grace. Because there's times when you won't be able to say take a step that day on whatever it is.
Right.
Something will come up because life happens, but it's giving yourself grace that it's like, okay, but tomorrow I can do another 1%.
Right.
Today I didn't, but that's okay, right?
Right.
Because
Mhm.
something came up and it just didn't happen. But tomorrow I can,
Right.
right? And giving yourself, because I know I have not given myself grace and given myself a hard time on, this expectation that I set for myself. That's a whole other story, because I mean, sometimes you can create too high of expectations as well.
Right.
So that's a whole other topic, but
Right. Well, I feel
yeah.
like I have to remind myself every day to give myself grace, because, just like you, I have a hard time, like if I'm telling myself I'm doing this goal and it's not, I'm not taking steps towards it, then obviously there's something wrong with me, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I have to remind myself every day, like, okay, I had a long day of things to do. I got a lot of it done, but I didn't get to the one thing. Oh well, like it's okay. I'll have to move it to the next day.
Yeah. And I find what's been helping for me, because I feel like everything is just sort of like been in fast forward in a sense, that it's really prioritizing. Like really, like not just prioritizing, but like almost time blocking. And so what I used to do was, say I had something coming up on Thursday, I would almost start worrying about it on Sunday or Monday. Or I'd be like working so far ahead for something that's really far away, rather than focusing on the stuff that actually had to be done, say tomorrow.
Right.
Right. So in terms of prioritizing, that's what I've been having to do, is just like, okay, so that needs to be done for Thursday, but this needs to be done for Monday. So I'm going to do this right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
And then almost the day before every day, it's like I'm working towards the next day. And that's kind of been helping me, because I'm not looking so far ahead that I'm missing out on the stuff that needs to be done right now.
Right.
Not that I'm getting everything done. I mean, there's still so much
I know.
like housework and whatever. So it's not like everything is done, right? I'm the same as you. Like I have to give myself grace and be like, that didn't get done today, but I can find this little block in my schedule and that's where I'm going to fit it in. Yeah. Well, I think that was a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No
So what
problem.
I'll do is I'll tag your page. So if anybody wants to reach out to you.
Okay.
And yeah. So thank you.
Sounds good.
If anybody was listening, awesome. This will stay on the page as well as I'm going to post it to my YouTube page as well. Not this evening, but probably like tomorrow. And yeah, so if anybody has any questions for either of us, just reach out. We're always open to a conversation, and hopefully we'll have some more too, because I think it's kind of fun to just let the words and the conversation happen organically. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Now, how do I do it though? Here we go. Nope, still live. Stop live stream. There we go. I figured it out.
Oh, you just ended with some laughing. That's all right.
There we go. And I'll